never distrust your imagination.
Mm.
The greatest thing that you can imagine for yourself is really the truth about who you are and why you're in the world. So never distrust what you see in your mind.
Welcome to Extraordinary Stories. I'm your host, Forbes Shannon, with me.
Christine Butler.
And today, this guest is rad. I'm
Right.
really excited. He's a Marine veteran. He's a faith-based leader. He has some really serious initiatives he's taking on, like poverty, as the
Right.
executive director of the Center of Poverty at the
Mhm.
Illinois Policy Institute, all the way from Chicago, Dr. Eddie Kornegay. Dr. K, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks so much. We're so excited to
Hello.
have you on today.
It's my honor and my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
So, Dr. K, rare two-time nominee. He were nominated by Aaron Bear and also by Austin Jack.
That's right.
You have to be nominated to be on the Extraordinary Stories by someone who's been on it, who finds you extraordinary. So, Dr. K, Aaron Bear, and Austin Jack, how do you know each of them?
Well, wow, that's an honor, right? Double A, right? So, uh, well, Austin and I worked together at Illinois Policy, and as the VP of external affairs, I think that's his title. We work closely with funding opportunities, and so the narrative around the work that we do is something that he helps to shape, and then push that out for our fundraising that we do, and so it's we're very conversational, and have gotten to know one another. And he's a great supporter inside of the organization, and just very motivational when it comes to him talking to me about myself. What
Yeah,
kind of
for
value I
sure.
might have in the world writ large. So that's how I know him. Aaron, of course, I met Forbes through you and Austin, and had a great conversation with him. He looks like a movie star to me. Uh, but we had a great conversation, and think that um, the work that he's doing is very fascinating. So I'm quite humbled and honored that two of them, the both of them, have nominated me for the Extraordinary podcast.
Yes.
That just means you're extraordinary.
There it is. Nice. Yeah.
Hey,
Double
hey,
extra.
Christine, I'll take that one. I'll take that.
Well, Dr. K really does have a truly extraordinary story. And it starts with when he's a boy, he was hopping around the world. Yeah. So, Dr. K, kind of take us through your childhood, because it was different from a lot of other people's, even that we've had on the show.
Yeah.
Well, I was born into a military family in 1958. And you can imagine the time in North Carolina, Greenville, North Carolina, Pitt County, North Carolina, 1958. Father was a career military man by that time. And born, unique experience. The doctor that delivered me, Dr. Andrew Best, had just started an effort to integrate what was then the White County Hospital in Greenville, North Carolina. And so I'm one of those first babies that got delivered
Wow.
in that White Hospital. Um, but immediately after, my first memories of living anywhere were on a military base, Fort Bragg in Fayetteville, North Carolina, then El Paso, Texas. From there, New Rochelle, New York, and then from there, living in France for 2 years. Um, and all of this because my father was a U.S. soldier. And so my experience was seeing, the Eiffel Tower before, and diverse, you know, uh, like playing with French kids. The only language that we shared was, you know, uh, understanding, playing with a bicycle, and fresh baguettes from
Mhm.
the Frenchman who had him on the back of his bike. But I learned how to ride a bike in France. Isn't that something? That's amazing, right? Uh,
Mhm.
but before I understood anything about segregation, I saw I had a first class, world class experience as a child. That's what formed me. And so I bounded back and forth between this first class experience of first class education, first class medical care, first class housing, first class nutrition in these sequestered spaces on military bases and the segregated community uh, called Lincoln City inside of Kinston, North Carolina, where my grandparents lived and my mother and father were raised. And so I had to learn how to be Black, uh, if you
Mm,
will, um,
Yeah.
and had that kind of tension between what I was used to and then what I had to use to navigate
mm,
the world that I was a part of and my peers
Mhm.
as a youngster in North Carolina, there in Kinston, North Carolina. But by that time, I was about 12 years old.
mm,
So often say I was raised globally,
Mhm.
but I lived in Kinston. So how do you live in a space, make the adjustments that you need when you have this outsized vision of yourself,
Mhm.
and but it's pushed down into a community and youth that much less hadn't seen the northwest side of town.
yeah.
And I had been a world citizen from the day that pretty much I was born.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, was there a specific conversation that you had with your parents
Mm,
when you did address those things?
No, no, there wasn't.
Mhm.
It's not. No one ever really sat down and said, "Okay, now this
Right.
is how it's going to be from here on out."
Right.
right.
But
Uh-huh.
but growing up in that kind of an environment, it was beautiful, actually.
Mhm.
I mean, where a community was self sufficient and did not
Mm,
necessarily have to go outside of its borders unless they wanted to.
mm,
It wasn't a thing where there was lack inside of the community. Um,
mm,
Rather, there were things that held the community together. First was faith.
Mhm.
mm,
It was anchored by faith. The other thing that it was anchored by was a powerful sense of dignity
mm,
um, that had more value than anything else. So everybody was Mister and Ms. It was yes, ma'am, no, ma'am.
mhm,
It was a level of respect that came because people trafficked in dignity and not in poverty. So you never
mm,
heard of anyone talking about being poor. And I see poor
mm,
people or I see poorness as something that is separate from poverty. They're not synonymous, and poor people are not impoverished for the most part.
mm.
Can you
They're not
explain
in
that?
part. Pardon? Can I
Can
can
you
I
explain
explain
the
that?
difference between Yeah,
Mhm,
please.
Well, I think that poverty is uh, you can be poor, meaning that you're meeting your needs. Your needs are
Mhm.
met. You don't have any. However that happens, but poverty is more of a um, it's a principality. It's a
Mm.
it's
mm,
a it's a marketplace.
mm,
It's where things come in and make you. People don't know they're poor until people. This is my thing. Most people don't know they're poor until somebody tells them that, and most of the time,
mm.
it's told, especially as a child, when someone looks at you and say, "What kind of shoes are those you got on?" You start
Yeah.
seeing differences, but the differences are more of what commodities you have access to versus being okay with the commodities that you have. Clean
Mhm.
clothes, a pair of shoes, food on the table. a roof over your head, a mother and father, or a mom or a dad. But then you have a community that embraces you no matter how much you have or how little you have. You still have your dignity. And I think what happens with poverty, the number one thing that it does is strip away your dignity.
Mhm.
So you'll
Mm,
accept whatever you can get, especially from the government, as opposed to
Mhm.
dignity, saying, well, how do I take what I have, my self-agency, my capacity to think through and
mm,
become innovative and go ahead and obtain or aspire the aspirations that I had? How do I move towards that? And at that particular point
mm,
in time, you had a community where doctors were lived beside the janitors or down the street from the janitors. There was still a little bit of
mhm,
segregation according to economics.
Mm.
Your teachers lived in your community. There was a a, a homogenous, um, if you will, uh, there was a homogenous feeling where success was possible because it lived
mm,
next door to you if you had the example,
Mm.
or it came through your front door, or it walked past you, or you worshiped with that. There wasn't any segregation when it came to success, and
mm,
um and so that vision for that was always available to you. I think of it, uh, Dr. Best, who delivered me and was my doctor up until I was about 40 years old. He delivered my younger brother. Then there was a doctor, his name was Dr. Harrison. Um, and these were black doctors. And Dr. Harrison delivered my sister at my grandparents' home. Um,
Oh.
mhm.
uh, and I always say I was the first in my family to be delivered in a hospital, out of three of us. I'm proud of that. Yeah, she's real old school, right? Um, and um, but I saw that doctor, Dr. Harrison, and early on, and I wanted to be a doctor. Funny
Mm,
thing is, I only knew that there were medical doctors. I didn't know about PhDs or any other thing,
Mm.
EDs, nothing like that. But he was an example for me.
mm,
And then when I got out in the world, okay, I understood that, well, I don't have the chops to be a medical doctor, but it took me a while to understand that there were other pathways, to
mm,
learning and
mhm.
excelling, that actually the capstone is maybe a PhD or something like that. Mhm.
Mm.
Right.
Well, I think what you talk about the model of success being accessible, that you can
Mhm.
see it and then you can see that it's possible. Well, like, how do you pay that forward now as a model? I mean, I know that you're a father of four. Like, how do you serve as an example to people now?
That's a great question. You know, I just live authentically. So what
Mm,
I mean by that is, uh, uh, the the journey towards where I am, is fraught with all kinds of stories of failure.
mm,
I don't exclude them from
mm,
who I am, or in conversation or in connectivity. I don't forget any of the people or any of those experiences. I had to tell who I am in a 1 minute. It was an interesting kind of a exchange. I was
Mm.
at an event, and I just kind of truncated things down to saying, um, you know, um, I had gotten to the end of my rope, and I mean, just life was a failure. I had exhausted my own capacities to try to craft a life, in a high school diploma, a few college credits, a web of lies.
mm,
And I called out to God and I said, okay, God, um, uh, I made an assessment of where I was, and then I kind of settled, right? I was like, well, I guess this is the best that I can do, exhausted mentally,
mm,
spiritually. And I said, okay, God, not my will, but your will be done. And little did I know, like 3 days later, everything that I had that was just teetering already, just held together very barely, came crashing down. And I said that, you know, it got worse before it got better. I mean, a lot
Mm.
worse before it got
It usually does.
better.
Yeah.
And so in that kind of i- in that kind of exchange in terms of, you know, understanding how weak I am and uh, understanding, you know, how frail success can be, that I accepted that challenge. So
Mm.
I went from making had a very good salary, but I hated the job. It was very hard work. But I went from being someone who could, you know, kind of take care of my bills to actually becoming homeless, with uh, 4 kids, um, and moving from North Carolina to Atlanta and staying in a senior assisted living place with my mother-in-law for that only had 1 bedroom. I found a chair that somebody had thrown out. It was a chair with a little hassock. That's what I would sleep on. And I went from, you know, making a really good salary. I would say back then it'd probably be like 120 or $150,000 today, to throwing newspapers for the Journal Constitution, Atlanta Journal Constitution. Oftentimes I would just sleep in the car in the parking lot, because I had to get up so early, and just drive to work. And then in the afternoons, after looking for work, I'd take my kids, put them in the back seat. They fall asleep. I'd get them up. We'd get to the distribution center. I'd put them in a little buggy, which they thought was so much fun. They were both in diapers at that time. I'd put them on the table, change diapers as I folded the papers, throw them in the back seat, put the papers in the front seat. We'd ride the route. Then after we finished the route, I'd go to the varsity down in Atlanta. And most people know where the varsity is. And I'd get a hamburger, some fries, and a drink. And the three of us would share that.
Mm.
And um, and they were amazing. The youngsters, the two youngest, they were amazing. It seemed like they understood perfectly what their father was doing and what he was going through. Um, but I found out that, um, uh, you know, just being present, and working through that, not trying to be anybody, not being pretentious, but, you know, doing what I could do. And I was poor. I
Mm.
understood what it meant to be poor,
Mm.
what it meant to have a stable couch as opposed to a home, what it meant to not be able to get a job, what it meant to fight for um, a um, unemployment check, what it meant to lose everything. But in the midst of all of that, the even though um, and I understood another sequence, not a success sequence of job, education, marriage, then children, but as success, but the success sequence where I met my needs today, my immediate needs, I'm a success.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, when you're in that mindset, how do you force yourself to look 5 years down the road?
Mm.
When you're
Mm.
stuck worrying about the now, how do you look 5 years, a year from then?
Uh, well, um, it takes faith,
Mm.
um, because you have to see your future by faith. You have to see things can get better through faith.
Mhm.
So it's all about that relationship with God. I had already talked to him. I said, "Okay, God, I'm at the end of it. Not my will, but your will. You take over." He was waiting for
Right.
that,
Yeah.
right? It was like he came in my house and just started at one end of the table and just raked everything off onto bam, bam, damn, boom, bow. And you know how that is, right? You wanna pick
Right.
everything up and try to put it back like it was. And I probably
Mhm.
did that 3 times. And every time he blew it up. he blew it up until I just said, okay. I was selling cars. I had got to a point where I was able to sell cars, right,
Mhm.
in Atlanta. And I was at this Nissan dealership in Jonesboro, Georgia. I'll leave it unnamed. It's probably a different name now. Anyway, I think it is. But I was able to, do a little bit. I was able to make a living. Um, and one day I was out on the lot and there was this man, he was in the used cars and he was an older man. And I was like, man, okay. I knew that's where I could make money with the used cars, right? More so than the new cars. You can't make money off new
Mhm.
cars. Only the used cars is where you make money. So you see somebody over there you like a great white, you start swimming towards and he was there and he was just browsing while his vintage 280Z was being serviced. And I'll never forget him. His name was Al Modest. Now, at that time, I thought that that I was sealed and sanctified, right? I um, um, had got baptized in the AME church and had a powerful moment. And I knew that it meant something greater than just the act of, giving my life to Christ. I didn't even really know what that meant to give my life to Christ, but I gave it in the spirit, not in the natural. I hadn't gotten to that point yet. But anyway, he sensed it and we went through prayer of salvation. But before we did that, he shut me up. I thought I could talk. I thought I could handle conversations and move and manipulate and maneuver. And he started talking with a series of questions. I can't even really remember, but it started at the grammatical level.
Mm.
He started correcting me there.
Mm.
Like, do you really know what you're saying? And it shut me up and he was able to pray for me right there on that parking lot. And I would say that there've been 3 instances of that kind of God, 3 or 4 of God coming in, and stopping me, making me do a self-assessment,
Mm.
getting, um, preparing me for the next step that I would have to make, and endowing me with the strength to be able to do it.
Mhm.
So, by this time I wasn't homeless, but, um, I was there were things happening around me that I didn't even understand. I was primarily like, you know, I didn't even know, about food stamps till I went to the store and, my then wife pulled out. I was like, "Food stamps?
Mhm.
What where did this happen?" Then, I was like then that went along with, I kept getting kicked out the house. So, because you can't have a man in the house, right? The house was Section 8. I didn't even know it.
Mm.
And, so I just kept my clothes in a suitcase in a closet, in a hall closet. And, the marriage was just, it was all kinds of stuff going on. But anyway, um, that moment set me up for the next. I was able to listen to Al Modest. He was probably about in his late 80s at that time. And he said, well, son, what you're going to have to do is go back to school. You're going to have to work. You got kids. You're going to have to go to work. You're going to have to do this. But the job is just secondary to you going back to school.
Mhm.
And I don't know where I am in this story, but um, that set me up to give me the strength to make the next set of decisions to actually go back to school, which was one of the hardest I had to make because that meant I had to leave Atlanta. Um, the marriage was done, but I'm in love with my children. Think I'm the better parent, you know. But I was very dangerous at that time to myself and anyone around me because I was kind of in that survival mode. I think that's the question that you had, Kristen. How do you get there, right?
Yeah.
But it takes great faith, and it
Mm.
takes you being able to make the best decision. And the best decision is a good decision bad decision, best decision. And the best decision takes in accounts for the good and the bad. And then you have to have the strength to go forward because the best decision is always somewhere out in front of you.
Mm,
You don't see
Right.
it right then. Um, and so it was a very almost debilitating,
mm,
in terms of me being able to actually take that step. But once I took it, it kind of God has met me at every step of the way. God has kept that covenant that because I said to him at that point when I made that decision to go back to school, at 35 years old,
Wow.
I said, God, well, just take care of if I'm going to do this, just take care of my kids. And every time I saw them and let me allow me to stay in their lives. And he did that, made a way.
mm,
And
mhm,
that kind of started um that 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 that's one of those moments. That's why I'm here now because
mhm,
every time God has said, uh, given me the opportunity to restore uh, um, and
mm.
move forward with that vision, I've said yes as best as I know how to.
Well, and shows up in unexpected ways, right?
Mhm.
Unexpected moments. So let's fast forward to now. Having gone through that journey and knowing what, in your words, what being poor is like, but still having the dignity to, you know, take care of your immediate needs. Now, what are you doing now to like repay that back? Because I understand that this is a big part of your story, and it's also a big part of the impact that you're making on the world.
Um, well, amen to that. If I'm having impact, well, you know, I've gone through many. It's like Odysseus almost. I've been to hell and back, literally. But I've been immersed in several different communities along the way. Um, and non-traditional student, um, um, drug addiction, um, homeless community, um, homelessness, um,
Mhm.
um, academic, which is probably the weirdest place that I've been, academic community, the reentry community,
Mhm.
the faith-based community where I got immersed in the Word of God. I had to go through all that before God actually opened up the Bible where I could understand it and use it and apply it to everything that I do.
Mm.
And now in the think tank space.
Mhm.
So all of those experiences inform where I am now.
Yeah.
And it keeps me there's a level of authenticity. So when I'm speaking, I'm not speaking objectively or theoretically. I mean, I
Mhm.
can, but it's all experientially. Um,
Mm,
um, and so everybody that I'm working with now knows me in one or more of those capacities.
mm,
Um,
mhm,
or they're experiencing me in a way that the compassion uh, um, and that love for people shows up.
mm, mhm,
Well, and I feel like a lot of people relate to you, right? I'm sure
mhm,
so many people will listen to the story and just say, "Yep, I've been there. I know exactly what that's
mhm,
like." What
Mm,
advice you give to somebody currently in that state?
mm. Well, the first thing that I do, really, Christina, is I never tell my story.
Mm.
It's rare that I do. I, I
Thank you for sharing it with us and our listeners.
oh, you're
Thank you.
welcome. Um, I lead with listening,
Mm.
and I I push them to think about the the greater vision that they have of themselves.
Mm,
There's so many
mhm,
the Bible. Just take for granted. be in the jail, Cook County Jail. When I started working there over 10 years ago, they were at their height in terms of how many people they had in the space. They had almost 14,000 men um, uh, in pretrial detention. Can you imagine?
Mhm.
14,000
Mm.
from
No,
all over the city of Chicago. About
that sounds like a
200 of
disservice.
those. Pardon? I'm
I said
sorry.
it sounds like a disservice. That
Uh,
that
well,
many
some
people
people
in one
need,
space.
yeah, some people need Jesus.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
Thank the Lord for jails. You have to forgive me when I say I'm not, I'm being a little funny, but some people,
I love it.
hey, it's a stop off. But anyway, um, uh, uh, the story of Joseph, I think God, the prisoner, of course, Matthew 25:35 through 36 says, if you've done it unto the least of these, the sick, the naked, the hungry, the thirsty, the stranger, the prisoner, if you've done it unto the least of these, you've done it unto me. So this is God, this is Jesus's people. He names them. It's in
Mm.
the red, it's in the
Right.
Mhm.
Bible. He says this. And so the prisoner oftentimes has all of those things going on with him or her. But
Mhm.
in the jail space, uh, I see the jail space as the that's the prisons and jails is the ministry of the Holy Spirit. And so you have to speak to the spirit of people because they're so bogged down with what they've done, they can't
Mm.
see who they really are.
Mm.
So many times I didn't ask what their name is, and I never asked what they were there for. I knew what they were there
Mhm.
for the most part, some type of heinous crime because I worked in the super max and max level divisions. So everybody there was either they were awaiting trial for murder or attempted murder or some other very
Mhm.
violent act. And I would use the Joseph story and talk about how Joseph went to the pit. He was, his brothers hated him. He got thrown in a pit. He went to Potiphar's house where he prospered for a while. Then he was accused, wrongfully accused. He ended up in prison, but then he ended up in the palace where he became the prince of Egypt.
Mm.
And one of the things that his brothers, when his brothers first saw him, they didn't recognize him because God had changed himself. And uh, that story is, I would say, look, you're going to be changed and transformed so much that your own brothers and sisters, your own mother will not recognize you,
Mhm.
you know, and motivate them to understand that the better part of their lives is next. How do you
Mm.
how do you position yourself to move from the prison to the palace? And so, I would use those stories in the Bible in one of my especially around restoration because nothing is lost. So Joel 2:25 is kind of a picture of my life. I will restore to you the years that the locusts, cankerworm, palmer worm, my great army that I sent amongst you. Um, um, and you will eat the fat of the land. So that restoration, I don't care how many years the world might take away, they seemingly take away. What what remains is what God has and will restore to you. And so that
Mm.
restoration has always been the revelation of the rest of restoration is something that I've always shared with people. And even in the communities of the work that I go into, I'm always seeing the revelation of restoration in
Mhm.
communities. I don't see vacant lots. I don't have a vision for that. Wherever there's a it's just something that has yet to come up. It's kind of like Jesus telling Peter to cast his net for a draught, and he said, "I've fished all night and haven't caught anything." But when I see so the lake was dry with regards to fish. I see vacant lots like that, or I see neighborhoods that have been impacted where where the sacred canopy of the community has been fractured and all of these different things have come in and they're just impacting the community, impacting the people. In fact, so much so that here in the city of Chicago, you can see people bent.
Mm, mhm.
The weight, not just of say their addictions, but the heaviness of that spirit of poverty bending people, drug addiction, homelessness,
Yeah.
addict behaviors. Um, uh,
But you see the revelation of restoration. You see the
I yeah,
potential of what things
I
can
see the
be
potential.
when they mm,
I see
that's
the
a
potential.
powerful. Yeah. I mean, this is a conversation that we're gonna have a lot more
Yeah.
follow on, but seeing the potential and the revelation of restoration.
Mhm. And honestly, it's your mindset, right? I think the biggest difference between those 2 things that you described earlier is your mindset.
Mm,
And I love
Oh,
that,
mhm,
and we see that
absolutely.
through you, Dr. K. I mean,
mhm.
just where
Well,
you we're sitting
thank
at
you.
now, I mean, it's incredible.
Well, thank
Extraordinary.
you.
Extraordinary.
Extraordinary. Well, God is the God of the extraordinary.
Mm,
The exceeding abundantly above all we can ever ask or think. And so I find I'm grounded in his word. I'm grounded in that relationship. Um, it doesn't mean that, Eddie is still Eddie, you know.
Mhm.
mhm.
Uh Dr. K is this other cat, but Eddie is still
Yeah.
Eddie,
Mhm.
and I'm always contending with all of that, and you know, see myself uh I'm still that 6-year-old that's just
Mm.
Aren't
uh
we all?
Oh,
yeah,
so before
that's
we
that
wrap today, Dr. K,
okay.
one thing that our listeners can do today, based on our conversation, to live a little bit more extraordinarily like Eddie, Dr. K. What is that?
Mm. Believe mm. Never distrust your imagination.
Mm.
The greatest thing that you can imagine for yourself is really the truth about who you are and why you're in the world. So never distrust what you see in your mind. That's
Never
good.
distrust what you see in
You're
your mind. That's
Mm,
good. I love that.
that's beautiful.
That's a great way to sound off. You can read more about Dr. K and the awesome work that he's doing at joinextraordinary.com. That's joinextraordinary.com. I'm Forbes Shannon.
Christine Butler.
Dr. K, thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless both of you.